I felt like I was capable of so much, but I felt blocked. I felt like I couldn't do it. This program, yes, it is a program that is designed for people who just love self-improvement in general, right? Like the High Existence team, we love self-improvement, spirituality, but also the experiences for people that are really struggling and feel really stuck, and feel, really ashamed or hopeless or alone.
Welcome back to this Anxiety Masterclass. I'm Mike Slavin. I'm here with John Brooks. This is part 3 of a series where we're diving deep into the intricacies of anxiety, what causes it, what keeps us trapped in anxiety, and what we can do to overcome and heal these anxious tendencies. And in this third and final part of this masterclass, John and I are going to be diving into the system that he has created and that he's been teaching people to support them in overcoming anxiety, this sort of holistic approach that he's developed through his years of research and trial and error. So, John, I'm very excited to have you back and to have this conversation with you.
Thanks, Mike. I'm really excited to be here. And everything, in a sense, has been leading up to this session. So there's going to be a lot of very useful and personal tips, techniques, and ideas that are going to make a really big impact.
Awesome. Thank you, John. I want to dive right in and talk about something we can loosely call the paradox of comfort. You were telling me a story a few days ago about a time where you really felt like you were in a rut and you were trying to break out of it. Could you share again with me and with those watching what that experience was like for you?
Yeah. So even though I experienced a broad range of anxious symptoms from hypochondria, social anxiety, hypervigilance, and the list goes on, and worry and things like that, I found the social element of anxiety to be the most painful, right? Because when you feel anxious, it will have an impact on your relationships, and maybe you'll feel some shame, maybe you'll want to hide it. This is stuff we've talked about. We don't want to be open about the feelings that we have related to anxiety because there's a bit of a stigma attached to it. And so I found the more I would experience anxiety in my early 20s, I started to have worse relationships. I felt like I couldn't make friends, I couldn't meet new people, and the relationships that I had were being impacted because I didn't want to do things because I was feeling anxious. And so the thing that really motivated me in the beginning was to try and overcome my social anxiety. I figured that if I could at least express myself well and engage with other people and be the version of me that I knew that I was in social situations, that would make me feel a lot better. So I became really interested in this idea of going out and practicing my social skills, but in the process of doing that, exposing myself through exposure is one of the models that we're going to be touching on in a little bit, by interacting with people that I didn't know. Now, at first, this was terrifying. The idea of talking to someone that I didn't know was very jarring, made me feel very uncomfortable, let alone to go out on my own sometimes to difficult situations like bars, nightclubs, populated areas, and to just chat to people. But I had read online that some people who had done this and made a practice of it made great improvements and progress in overcoming their social anxiety. So I thought, this is a really cool thing for me to do. I can go out, I can practice my social skills, I can become more resilient, more resourceful, more confident. So I told a friend about it. He was also struggling a little bit with social anxiety, and we found where the nearest city was, and we started going out. We would drive there, and we would get really hyped up. We'd be having great conversations in the car as we got there, listening to music, talking about all of the cool things that we're working on. We'd be really motivated by the idea of improving ourselves, becoming the best version of ourselves. And then we'd get to the bar, and there would be this imaginary glass wall around us. We felt like we just couldn't talk to anyone. We could talk a big game, we could talk about all the things we could do, but when it came time to actually breaking outside of our comfort zone and engaging with people, we felt stuck. And it was the weirdest thing because we could see what was happening, but we couldn't do anything about it. Our mind would start to get flooded with all of these different excuses, like you shouldn't talk to anyone, that's weird. You shouldn't talk to anyone, it's going to end in a fight, it's going to be dangerous. whatever the excuse was, you shouldn't talk to this person because maybe they would reject you really hard and they don't want to talk to you and you'd be embarrassed and everyone would see it and they'd all laugh at you. We really experienced this flood of excuses about the potential downsides of actually interacting with people. And this was anxiety playing in full force. So the first time we did it, we felt that, we could see that it was happening. We didn't feel very good. We kind of give ourselves an easy pass and just went back home, got a coffee, drove home and chatted about it. But then, lying in bed, going to sleep that night, I felt like I'd kind of wasted my time. I hyped myself up. I was going to engage with people. I was going to really do it this time and overcome my social anxiety, but I just couldn't do it. So I told myself that I would 100% do it next time. And when I thought about it, it felt easy again. Like, I can absolutely do this. So we went out again the next day and the same thing happened. We just felt absolutely stuck. There was nothing that we could do. And it's really difficult because when you're having anxiety, you feel really out of control. You physically can't do the things that you want to do. And that's extremely confronting because we like to think of ourselves as being in control. And here I was, someone who'd already done a fair amount of self-development work, someone who had a meditation practice. I was doing the right things. I was reading books. I had the right intentions, but I could not just talk to someone like a general chit chat with someone that I didn't know. And that was really confronting. I felt like I just couldn't do these things that I really wanted to do. And it was really painful. And I wish I could say that it ended there and I suddenly changed and I made this huge progress. But actually this pattern went on for months. And every time I'd come back home, me and my friend would chat, we'd have this big plan of going out again and try to socialize and overcome our social anxiety, and we just couldn't do it. So I'm not someone who is saying that, I struggled for the first week in doing this, and then eventually, after a week or two, I did it. It was actually months and months of pain and struggle and going home every night, just feeling this sense of I'm like wasting my potential. Like, how am I going to do anything of worth in this life if I can't simply talk to someone when I want to do that and I know it's good for me and I know it's safe? And that was a really difficult feeling.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think that there's this sensation, this feeling. It's weird how it can be this way, but the relief that you can feel after you're exiting that situation, leaving this glass wall that was in your experience, and now you're driving home, and what you're feeling is a sense of relief, I imagine, to some degree, but there's also the feeling of deeper than that. I'm not doing the thing. No longer is the anxiety screaming at you loudly. You've been able to get out of that situation, but you also know deeper down that you didn't do the thing you came to do. So there's that lack of fulfillment. And if that pattern continues and persists over time, then that feeling of not being able to reach your potential becomes, I think, really salient and really in your face. And so over time, this is just one particular context in which you were experiencing anxiety coming to the fore for you. I'm curious, what other symptoms were you experiencing? This is just one particular context in which anxiety was rearing its head. How else did you experience anxiety?
So in my early 20s, I went through a period of not being able to fall asleep until the sun came up because I was so terrified by this image of people breaking into my room with weapons, right? The images that seemed very real and very plausible. So I would keep myself awake until the sun came up. And you can imagine what that did for my sleep cycle as well. I've had to leave cinemas, bars, public transport for fear of terrorist attacks, simply because there was a bag there or an item there. I've had to leave venues if there was any hint of confrontation. It's one thing to feel anxiety, but it's another thing to have that anxiety impact your behavior. And that's something that is really difficult. There's one thing to walk past someone and to feel a little bit of anxiety, but it's another thing to actually completely change the route that you're walking because of this image that's popped up into your mind and there's no evidence for it. I've experienced panic attacks. I've had visits to the emergency room in the hospital because of suspected heart issues in my early 20s when there was just no real evidence for it. In fact, my heart was very healthy, and I had a low pulse, and that's part of the reason I was freaking out, but it was actually fine. I have had full-blown panic attacks where I've rang ambulances.
Part of the reason I asked that question, John, was to give people the impression that you're not just someone who would feel, some butterflies in your stomach or some fleeting feelings of anxiety. You've grappled with the beast. You've experienced some pretty severe consequences and sensations as a byproduct of anxiety. It wasn't simply just a little bit of a nuisance. It was very challenging and difficult to overcome the experience that you were faced with in the way that anxiety would present itself to you. So I just want people who are watching who might have some extreme experiences with anxiety, or they find that anxiety is causing them to change their behavior in ways that they rather not, that you're not alone, and it's possible to overcome it with the right tools and techniques. And we're going to get more into that as we go through part 3 here. Having panic attacks actually was an important part of this journey. It sort of served as an inflection point. Could you tell us a bit about that, John?
When it comes to healing addictions, one of the ideas is that oftentimes people need to hit rock bottom before they find the motivation and the drive to overcome the thing that's causing them so much pain, the addiction. Anxiety can kind of be like that, where you might have anxiety pop up here and there, but then you avoid it and then you feel comfortable again, and you just kind of go through life like this, kind of coping and avoiding. Panic attacks are its own kind of problem, in the sense that you can't just avoid a panic attack, right? Like, you can avoid things that make you afraid externally, but in the moment of having a panic attack, where can you go? You can't go anywhere. You are completely out of control. Your world starts collapsing in on you. You feel like something terrible is happening, and you're having physical sensations that show evidence that this is true, whether that be sweating, feeling weak, fatigued, heart palpitations. And it's this horrible experience. Your breathing changes, and you can't run anywhere, right? And so you have to just hold on and just dig deep and just fight through it. And I had experienced a wide array of anxious symptoms for many years, but it wasn't until I was living abroad and I was experiencing some stresses in life. And this is why I put a big emphasis on looking at your life holistically when it comes to working on anxiety. I was experiencing some stresses in my life, and then I started getting these panic attacks. And at first I actually thought I was ill. I thought there was some problem with me, some problem with my heart. And 99% of the time, a panic attack is a self-misdiagnosis. You think that there's something terribly wrong. You think you're going to die. But instead of being able to run away from the fear, the trigger is locked within you. So you can't run away from yourself. And because you can't run away from yourself, you start essentially resisting being itself. You start resisting yourself, and you can't go anywhere. And that's what creates this downward spiral. And it's very much like feedback on a microphone. It just keeps looping and looping and looping and looping, because the thing that you're trying to run away from is impossible to run away from. And so for me, I would kind of collapse down onto my knees, try and take deep breaths. And this would happen, semi-frequently. And I tried lots of different things. I tried talking to myself in the middle of it. I tried deep breathing. I tried all these different things, and it wouldn't work. And also, because these panic attacks are so horrible and difficult, you start having the anxiety about having another panic attack. So as soon as you start to feel like you might have a panic attack, you start feeling anxious about having a panic attack, which makes it more likely that you will. So it's just like very unpleasant place to be. And so this was my rock bottom when it came to anxiety. And so I started researching. I started reading, how can I actually overcome panic attacks? The general advice was not very good, like take deep breaths, try and relax, right? None of these things actually helped, So I found a book called When Panic Attacks, written by Dr. David Burns, who's a legend in CBT. And I know that CBT is heavily influenced by Stoic philosophy, something that I'd also been researching a lot. And David Burns gave this principle for overcoming panic attacks that was very counterintuitive and quite jarring when I first read it. And he said that when he has a client come in to his office, he will try and induce a panic attack in them, in front of him. And then when they're in the middle of a panic attack, he will ask them to go and do push-ups. And I was like, surely, is this ethical? But the reasoning behind it is that when you're in the middle of a panic attack, first of all, you can't really think your way out of it. The anxiety is too strong. And you have this serious belief that there is something wrong and that you're going to die. And so instead of trying to talk your way out of it, what he has his clients do is challenge that idea directly in the moment. So if you think you're having a heart attack, go do some push-ups and find out. Okay? And then when they start doing it, they realize, like, I can actually do this. I can actually do push-ups and my heart is still beating normally. Wow. And the panic attacks will sometimes stop permanently. So the next time that I had a panic attack, I started running. It was in the middle of a street in Prague. I started feeling this collapsing in feeling. My breathing started to change. This dread, this like deep dread in the pit of my stomach was like sort of like, oh no, no, no. I hope this doesn't happen. Sort of like when you're about to be sick, you know, that kind of like you feel like something is coming and you're worried about it and it starts to build in momentum. And I just was like, right, I know this is coming. Now I'm going to just start doing sprints. And I started sprinting and I didn't have the panic attack. And I was saying to myself as I was running, you know, like, if you're going to have a heart attack, have one now, right? Like, I'm really making my heart like elevated. I'm going to go even faster. And I was showing my unconscious, I was showing my brain that I was actually okay. You know, that there wasn't anything wrong with my heart, that I was fine. And I haven't had a panic attack since I started doing this. And that was a huge epiphany for me, where I was able to read something and it was very simple, the advice, and then I was able to apply it and make a serious change in my day-to-day experience and how I felt. And that was the beginning of me really starting to dig into understanding anxiety properly. And yeah, that experience has stuck with me to this day. And there's also a lesson in there, right? That method of overcoming anxiety, it's essentially you kind of challenge the anxiety and you ask for proof, you know, like one of the acronyms for fear is false evidence appearing real. There's something to that, right? There's more to the story when it comes to anxiety, but there's something in that. And the technique of challenging the anxious thoughts in the middle of a panic attack physically, instead of just thinking about it, actually reveals something important about anxiety.
Okay, John, so you have this epiphany, panic attacks lead you to this rock bottom place. You get this wisdom from Dr. David Burns. You're running through your panic attacks, and this creates this realization that if I continue to apply and test different principles and practices, I can overcome the way that anxiety is holding me back. And so fast forward, you go through this deep process of research. What doors begin to open up to you? What's on the other side of anxiety? What was on the other side of anxiety for you?
So when I was experiencing a lot of the anxious symptoms, I remember it was years when I just didn't have a girlfriend, and years where I had just like one or two friends, for example, and just years of just being sort of stuck. And then, flash forward after applying these principles, I found myself with this deep sense of core confidence where, to me, I just knew I could make friends. I could go anywhere in the world on my own and get a social circle, which is like an incredible thing to have, like just that confidence, that deep knowing that I won't struggle there. And the same is true, when you can make friends, then the likelihood of you being able to meet a partner, meet a soulmate or someone that you'd like to spend more time with, that also opens up much more easily, when you can socialize. So that also was like a big shift, just having more relationships, really good friendships with people, and it just not being this kind of source of angst or insecurity or difficulty. It's just like, oh yeah, I can do that now, and it's not a big deal. I can go and make friends and meet people and do things. That was a really big one. Another one was, it was just scary for me to walk around at night and I was able to then go out. I felt complete freedom and no fear about doing that. Even going to Costa Rica and walking at night, in jungly areas where there's potential snakes and jaguars, and doing that without this terror in the pit of my stomach. Giving workshops, from going to feeling this social anxiety with friends of friends, like small groups of people close to me, to then being able to give workshops to 30, 40 people who are all looking at me and listening to me, and to deliver ideas and information in a way that helps them. That was incredible to be able to do that. And then to go on and to do it over and over and over again. To speak to people who have read High Existence, to have phone calls with readers of the website. That was also incredible, without having any kind of fear. I've been fortunate enough to be able to speak to authors on the podcast. That was unthinkable for me. Just imagine how you would feel now sitting down 20 minutes from now for a 2-hour interview of one of your favorite authors. What kind of feelings would come up for you? To be able to get to a place where you can be comfortable doing that, that's an incredible feeling to have, just a sense of ease in doing that. Something that has also been very important for me on my own hero's journey, and part of the way that I teach you to overcome anxiety is to create your own hero's journey, has been Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So again, feeling this fear of fighting and physical confrontation to now feeling completely at home in a room full of trained fighters, MMA fighters, Jiu-Jitsu grapplers, and to be able to spar with them and have fun doing it. That has been an incredible experience for me, to become so comfortable and to look forward to it and to revel in confrontation and to master that side of my life and to go on to compete, to feel those nerves, to feel that adrenaline before competing, where the person you're going against really wants to win, and to ride through it using the techniques instead of wanting to avoid and to leave and to quit. All of these things have been extremely meaningful, and one of the reasons I think my own journey of overcoming anxiety, and I hope the same is true for you, is one of the most epic things. It's a true epic journey that we can go on.
You go through this experience of having extremely crippling anxiety in all different kinds of contexts, social anxiety, panic attacks, and it was keeping you from living the life that you wanted to live. You begin to really dive into the research and form an understanding for yourself. How can I overcome this? Because if I don't do this, I'm not going to live the life that I feel I'm meant to live. I'm just not going to be able to seize the reins and have the experiences that I want to have. I'm going to be sort of closed off in this wall and be unable to really reach for the things that I feel called to. And you go through this process, the doors begin to open. All of these things that you just listed off, you got to experience. And then you decided, you know what, this is important work. This changed my life in a very real way. I want to share it with some people. So you decided you would publish a brief course on a popular meditation platform to just put some of this work out there and see if it could help other people. And the response was really impressive. 185 reviews, 4.8 out of 5 stars. Some of the things that people said: absolutely love this course. I plan on redoing it over many times. As a side, I usually avoid anything marketed as ancient wisdom, but in the case of Stoicism, this was truly a wise system for living and thriving. John does a fantastic job of combining Stoic teachings with modern understanding of anxiety. Great course, worth repeating. I found this course to be very helpful in disarming the negative effects of anxiety. Many thanks for offering it, John. I'm looking forward to anything else you put out here. This course helps me to feel better. I will do it again. All of these kinds of things. People just generally saying thank you to you. This course is eye-opening and deep, even though it was only 7 days. Each day is powerful and provided me a sense of strength. I feel with the practices in this course that I can get a better handle on my anxiety. Thank you. And so a lot of beautiful sentiments that people shared. And just seeing that this little bit of wisdom, these 7 days, was having such an effect on people. What did that feel like? What was that like for you?
It was an interesting thing, because it was definitely a surprise in some sense that, so many people were listening to it so suddenly, and I was getting all of this feedback and it was all positive. But it also wasn't surprising at all that it was helping people, right? Because I just really know that what I'm talking about and what I'm sharing works, and I've used it myself and I've used it with other people over the years as well. And so yeah, I just felt like very happy that it was helping people. But there was no doubt in my mind when I released it that it would.
Part of the reason I bring this up is to demonstrate that the work that you've done has moved through a variety of filters. It started with you and your own personal testing, and then it moved to just sharing your insights with friends and private clients. Then it moved to this meditation app where thousands of people got to interact with the work, your personal mailing list, which was a deeper dive, more comprehensive take, and now we have this next iteration that we're giving people in the high existence audience the opportunity for the first time to dive into this material with you. And so, John, can you tell people about this program? What's it about? What makes it different?
Yeah, so the program is called Anxiety Rewired. And at the heart of it, it's about changing our relationship to anxiety and avoiding those traps that we've talked about. One of those traps is the elimination trap, where we try to just eliminate this terrible, bad thing called anxiety from our lives forever. But instead, the aim of Anxiety Rewired is to reframe the pursuit of working on our anxiety as a path to mastery, as something that is epic and challenging and fun and extremely fulfilling and rewarding. And that's what it's been for me, and that's what I would really like it to be for you too.
I love that. And one of the fun ways of conceiving of this process of overcoming our anxiety, because we're not simply focused on just eliminating and cutting this thing out in this very adversarial dynamic where we've really formed this relationship to ourselves where there's a lot of resentment and bitterness towards this part of us that experiences anxiety. Instead of that, I'm on this quest, I'm on this journey, almost as if you were a video game character and you're going to go through these different challenges and have to fight these bosses and move through these caverns. And so the question becomes, well, what am I equipped with as the character in this game trying to go on this quest and get to the end? What does that look like? And so there are 4 maps and 4 tools that you can conceive of this video game character having at their disposal. Can you tell us a bit about what those things are? What are the 4 maps? What are the 4 tools that people will learn to use as they go through this experience?
Sure, yeah. So the 4 maps are based on the 4 leading causes for anxiety. Those models are the exposure model. So the things that we avoid typically become scarier over time. The hidden emotion model, and that's the model where the emotions that we repress and the things in our life that we're not dealing with, those resurface elsewhere as anxiety symptoms. We have the cognitive model, and the model here is that our thoughts cause our negative feelings, and in this case, our anxiety. And then we have the biological model, and that is pretty simply that we are biological machines, and the way that we live, the way that we eat, sleep, and the neurochemicals that we have affect our levels of anxiety. So these are the models, but in Anxiety Rewired, these are the maps. And it's important that when we work on our anxiety, that we spend some time on each of those. Some of those maps we will have better handled than others, but it's still very important to look at them all. And one of the mistakes, as I mentioned earlier, is we don't want to ignore certain aspects of these maps. So some of us might focus on the biological model and tell ourselves that if we just eat extremely well, then we'll never have anxiety again. And sure, there may be some relationship between our diet and our anxiety, but there's also a relationship between the things that we avoid and also the thoughts that we have and also the things in our life that we're not addressing, right? So we look at all of these maps. And the 4 tools are psychological writing exercises, guided contemplations, theoretical frameworks, and the 4th one is side quests or auxiliary systems. And the auxiliary systems are things that we can focus on or change that can have an effect on our anxiety, but may not be central to the problem of overcoming anxiety. So an example might be, we should learn how to navigate trauma and heal trauma, because our past trauma might have an effect on our anxiety, but it's not essential that we do this kind of work to make huge progress in our anxiety. Psychological writing exercises do a lot of work with the cognitive map. So when you follow certain writing formulas, and I've laid out a lot of templates in Anxiety Rewired, templates that have come from ancient Stoicism and also templates that are used by the best cognitive behavioral therapists. By practicing these daily, you can change the way you think, and therefore you'll change the way you feel. And the theoretical frameworks are very important. If you can see how your anxiety is working in the moment, you will have the tools to then navigate it. So with the example that I gave you with overcoming panic attacks, when you understand the principle at work there, then you don't necessarily have to do sprints or have to do push-ups. You can challenge the anxious thoughts in other ways. And so I've laid out the theoretical framework so you can really understand how your anxiety is working, how these maps and tools work on a deep level. And that will be useful for the rest of your life, because you will have a completely different relationship to your anxiety. And then finally, we have guided reflections that, again, are based on modern science and also ancient therapeutic techniques like Stoic contemplations and Buddhist contemplations. And the purpose of these guided contemplations is that you can be completely alone in a quiet space and psychologically lean into the things that cause you anxiety in a way that feels safe and manageable. And when you can practice doing this, by the time then you go out into the world and start taking action, your anxiety will be a lot lower. So the way that I like to teach is that we first of all practice in our mind's eye, like a visualization, and we practice through psychological writing exercises, preparing ourselves, similar to how a martial artist will hit a bag or hit pads as a way to prepare themselves for battle, so that when they are actually faced then with the battle of life, they feel much more confident and ready to deal with that.
Great. So we get these maps, and the maps are important because it helps us assess where we are in the landscape of our anxiety and where, the bosses might be hidden, where the monsters are on the path that we might need to address. And rather than being fixated on one particular way of interpreting how we're experiencing anxiety, we develop this comprehensive, holistic understanding. That way we can really identify the areas in which we could gain the most, because if a small tweak could have an outsized effect because we haven't been attending to this particular area. Maybe it's the biological model. Our sleep has been way off. It's causing these spikes in anxiety. If we address that, then it can be a complete game changer. And then you have the tools, just like, how do I use these? How do I practice with them? How do I use them in the world so that I can, in real time, overcome the anxious tendencies that I'm experiencing? And, I want to talk about, this is really just touching the top level. What we're talking about is just the core material. There's a lot more that goes into Anxiety Rewired as an experience and a program. What would you say to people who would say, well, I've tried journaling before, or I've done meditation? How is this different from that?
It's like someone saying that they've tried exercise to get stronger. Well, it's like, well, what type of exercise did you do? Did you do marathon running? Did you go surfing, right? Like, there are different forms of exercise that have a different adaptation. So, certain types of weightlifting routines might make you more explosive. Certain weightlifting routines might increase your muscular endurance, and other ones might make you have more strength, right? And that's just weightlifting, forgetting all the other types of exercise. So when it comes to meditation, there are lots of different types of meditations. There are lots of different ways of journaling. It's important that when we are working on our anxiety, we connect the meditation style or the journaling style to the research that we have on anxiety, right? So it needs to be based on a principle that is proven to help you overcome your anxiety. So sitting and meditating on the breath, for example, is a useful practice, okay? It's something that I sometimes do, and it can help calm the system, but it doesn't address the core issue of anxiety. It doesn't help you really face the thing that's causing you anxiety. It doesn't give you the tools and the techniques to actually deal with it in life. Okay, it might help you be 10% calmer. Now, if you do that style of meditation for 25 years, then in the course of that style of meditation, maybe a lot will happen, right? Maybe you'll release traumas and get insights that someone who's doing it for a month won't have. So for me, it's not good enough to prescribe someone with a type of meditation that is going to take them 25 years to maybe have a breakthrough in their anxiety. I give people meditations that are specifically designed to help you overcome your anxiety in the session itself. So in 10 minutes, you will make progress on overcoming your anxiety, and you will change your relationship to it in a way that sticks.
So there's this core experience that people will go through in Anxiety Rewired that involves these maps and these tools that we're talking about. But there's a lot more to this experience than we've talked about so far. There's this anxiety toolkit that we've put together. It's this assembly of extra resources that are really useful, including the anxiety meditation course, the 7 days that we mentioned earlier that got all of those rave reviews. That's one of the things included in it. Essentially, we could spread out this content and sell them each individually, but we decided we want people to get the most benefit out of this. Let's give them this additional treasure trove that they can use to make extreme progress in overcoming their anxiety. Can you tell people a bit about what's inside this anxiety toolkit, some of the things that they have to look forward to if they decide to participate with us in this program?
Yeah, so there's nothing that we are holding back in Anxiety Rewired. We are really putting everything that we have into this experience. On top of the core Anxiety Rewired experience, we have a whole separate entire course specifically focusing on social anxiety. This social anxiety course will give you the tools to be able to flourish socially and have core confidence in any situation. There's a separate meditation course that is focused on stoic radical gratitude. And this will help you to feel grateful and to truly cherish every emotion that comes up for you in life. And this is a superpower when you can do this. When you have anxiety, you have panic, you have melancholic feelings, you have sadness, you can still feel grateful for them. Magically, these emotions will start to dissolve and evaporate. I've also included an Anxiety Rewired strategy guide that just makes everything super simple, so you can just check the items off. And if you just follow this strategy guide in a step-by-step fashion, you will make incredible gains on your anxiety, on overcoming it and rewiring it and changing your relationship to it.
So there's the Anxiety Rewired core experience, but then there's the Anxiety Toolkit, which includes additional courses, checklists, a bunch of amazing stuff. You can see all the details on the enrollment page at anxietyrewired.com. But there's even more that we've included because we didn't want people to just have the experience of paying for a course, signing up, and then just toiling away, going through the material by themselves. We wanted there to be a live component to the experience. So there are 6 live workshops that you can participate in if you sign up for Anxiety Rewired, so that you can interact with other people who are struggling with similar things that you're struggling with, recognize that you're not alone, get the opportunity to face some of the anxiety as it comes up in real time in a safe space, and also learn a lot of additional techniques and modalities that aren't covered elsewhere in the experience. John, can you tell them a bit about some of the workshops we've got lined up for Anxiety Rewired?
So I have a lot of experience running practical, interactive, transformative workshops. It's something that I love to do. And I've given a few workshops on some of the modules and elements of Anxiety Rewired, and I found that people absolutely love them. And they said that they found just the workshops alone, not even including the core experience, deeply transformative. I've seen people have amazing changes in their relationship to anxiety just from the things that we've discussed in live calls. Now, if you go back to the 4 maps and 4 tools, I mentioned that one of the tools is side quests or auxiliary systems. And this would be things like how to escape negative thought loops. Right? So you do a lot of work on anxiety, but there's always going to be that day, for whatever reason, that you're in the grip of an anxious episode and things are tough. What do you do then? That's something that we're going to practice in one of our live workshops. We have how to heal trauma. Trauma is a very interesting subject. I don't think that it's essential that we look into the past and work on our trauma to make significant improvements in our anxiety, but it is still something that is worth looking at. And there may be some gems or insights that we can glean from examining our traumas. We have workshops where we do sort of social sparring, where we get to practice with other people on the calls, and I'll be there too, and the High Existence team will be there, how we can actually express ourselves confidently, overcome insults and all of these difficult social situations that give rise to more anxiety and more insecurity. We have a live workshop on goal setting. This is very important because if you don't have discipline, if you can't set goals right, then the perfect map when it comes to anxiety won't help you, right? You need to have at least a little bit of drive to be able to tick those things off. And that's something that I'm passionate about helping people develop, is the discipline to actually do the inner work. And we also have some workshops that I won't get into now. They're sort of more like surprises, but every workshop is packed full of practical, implementable ideas that you can start using immediately. And I'm there as well to assist and to guide personally. It's very important to me that I get to interact with you.
And if anyone is listening to this and thinking, oh no, I'm going to have to interact with other people, don't worry. Although this would be a great opportunity to confront some of the anxiety that you're experiencing, attending these sessions live is optional. You're going to get access to the recordings. So if there's a timing issue or it doesn't feel right for you to show up live on the call, then that's completely fine. You're going to get access to the recording. You'll still be able to benefit from all of the rich insight that's inside of these workshops. And there's also the community platform where you're going to be able to post your questions and ask Q&A and get support outside of these sessions. So if you can't make it to the live sessions or that context is a little bit hard for you, you'll be able to ask in text, hey, this is the thing that I'm struggling with. Does anyone have any input or advice? So you can really get tailor-made suggestions for your circumstances to help you apply the material in a way that really makes a difference for you. So there's all of these really wonderful facets that we're weaving into the experience. So if you're someone who struggles with anxiety and it's something that you want to overcome, you want to transform your relationship to it so that you feel like I'm on this path of living a meaningful life and I am tackling my anxiety in a way that makes me feel more confident in myself and more capable as a human being, such that now I can walk through the world and even be a calming and supportive influence for other people. If that's the kind of work that you want to do, I really want to encourage you to explore what we have to offer you with Anxiety Rewired. You'll be able to access the enrollment page soon. You might be able to access it now, depending on when you're watching this video. It will be on anxietyrewired.com, and you can get more details down in the description below. But we're very excited to bring a small group of people into this experience and see what kind of radical transformation we can create together. We're coming to the end of this Anxiety Masterclass. We hope that you've enjoyed this material that we've been able to share. One thing that was really important was to be able to do some good in just sharing some free material that can make a difference in your life if you applied it. And for those who really want to take the next step, Anxiety Rewired is that option. But even if you decide that's not right for you, we really hope this was able to make a difference. Anxiety can be a really difficult experience, and we genuinely just want to help. We poured a lot of energy into making this masterclass, so we hope that it was supportive for you in some way. If there are additional questions that you have, please feel free to ask us, write us an email, comment. We'll try to address them in future material, articles, videos, podcast episodes, whatever it might be. And John, I'm really curious, just to put a bow on this masterclass experience, what would you say to someone who has watched these 3 videos and they feel some excitement about the prospect of participating in Anxiety Rewired, but there's also this part of them that feels like, I don't know if this will work for me. I've tried other things, I haven't gotten a lot of benefit out of them, or I just feel like I can't make sustainable progress. Is there any words of encouragement you might give them that might help them in leaning in and just taking the chance?
What I would encourage you to do is to just take a look at the last, say, 5 years of your life and to ask yourself, what kinds of important changes or progress have you made? Are you significantly happy with those? You know, we can even look at the last year. Are you in a place with your lifestyle, relationships, health, passions? Are you living the kind of life that you want to live? You know, when you look in the mirror, is that person someone that you like, someone that you're proud of, someone that you think, yeah, you're doing well. You're not perfect, but you're doing good work. Or do you feel kind of stuck, like you're wasting your life away? You know, that's how I felt. You know, I felt like I was capable of so much, but I felt blocked. I felt like I couldn't do it. And, you know, this program, yes, it is a program that is designed for people who just love self-improvement in general, right? Like the High Existence team, we love self-improvement, spirituality, and the entire experience of Anxiety Rewired is, to be honest, for anyone who just really likes working themselves, because there's always going to be times when we experience anxiety, whether that be illness, death, grieving, job interviews, right? There's always going to be times, but also the experiences for people that are really struggling and feel really stuck, you know, and feel, you know, really ashamed or hopeless or alone. And so the question that I have for you is, do you think, after listening to these 3 sessions, that there is something in here? Is there something inside? Is there some kind of call or something resonating with you that tells you that you can do this, and this could be the start of a journey that changes your life forever? That voice, even though it can be scary to listen to sometimes, because the anxiety comes in and tells us, like, no, you shouldn't do that. You know, avoid, stay comfortable. But if that voice is saying, do this, go for it, then I'm on the side of that voice, you know, because you're going to be safe with me. You're going to be safe with the High Existence team. We will look after you. Everything will be fine. If you don't feel that, if none of these sessions have resonated with you and it just doesn't click, and, you know, then fair enough, you know, no worries, just carry on and, you know, use whatever tools you're finding helpful. But if this program is signaling something to you important, and you're still here right now at the end of session 3, then, you know, all I can say is just take the leap.